Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Vincent Datchety, President and CEO of Mental Health Colorado. Thank you again so much for joining our virtual conference series on women's well-being. This free conference is offering 60-minute afternoon presentations and discussion from Tuesday through Friday this week. Experts by experience, advocates, practitioners, and others are addressing and discussing some of the unique mental health experiences faced by women and other people of marginalized genders. Thank you all for joining us today in acknowledgement that women's rights are a mental health matter. Please invite your colleagues and allies to join us this week, and please know that each of this week's summits will be recorded and will be made available on our website. Today's session will not be recorded in full. 2 of the 3 presentations will be included in our website, and we will turn off the recording for our second presentation. On day one, for our first presentation. On day one, our presenters spoke about eating disorders, weight stigma, mental health treatment equity, and vulnerability in brain health. Yesterday, our presenters spoke about criminal justice and empowerment, in addition to perinatal well-being and environmental and social supports during pregnancy and postpartum. Today, we're going to hear about intimate partner violence prevention, about working moms and burnout, and about trauma recovery and resilience. And finally, tomorrow, Friday, we will hear about sexual assault prevention and perinatal violence prevention. Before we get started, I want to thank my colleagues at Mental Health Colorado for all their efforts in making this series possible. And many thanks again to all our presenters and participants for joining us this week. Please know that our advocacy and education work is possible thanks to the generosity of our partners and allies, and thank you for any donations. In this historical moment of persistent and emergent violence on women's rights and personhood, globally and domestically, from Iran to the US Supreme Court, we aim to promote more holistic comprehension of women's mental health needs in the interest of advancing well-being and empowerment, especially in anticipation of the midterm elections. If you haven't yet registered to vote, please do so without delay so that your voice is heard. As you listen to our speakers, please use the Q&A function to ask any questions. We will have a few minutes for questions after our final speaker of the day. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker before going off screen myself to listen attentively. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Whitney Casares, board-certified pediatrician, author, speaker, and working mom, to speak with us about working moms and burnout. Dr. Casares, it's all yours, and you'll be able to share your screen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Give me just 1 second. I'll share my screen. Okay, press play here. Okay, so my name is Dr. Whitney Casares. I'm a pediatrician. I am a mom of 2, and I also am a huge advocate for working moms everywhere. And I'm the author of a couple of books with the American Academy of Pediatrics, including The Working Mom Blueprint, Winning at Parenting Without Losing Yourself. Today, we're going to talk about some really vulnerable topics for moms, things that are hard-hitting, things that we feel so deeply. But I have to share a secret first, because I'm going to ask you to dig deep and to be vulnerable with me. And that is, I'm a total believer. I always tell everybody, hey, if you can't be silly in your presentations and tell everybody your secrets about the hip hop music that you like, then how can you actually be effective with reaching people? I will come back to this, I promise. But in all seriousness, I actually have a deeper secret, and that's that my working mom life is full of stressors. Now, you may be thinking, why would someone who could come and talk about burnout actually admit that this is true for them? But the reality is, life in general is stressful. It's stressful. We all have things that don't go our ways. We all have things that are out of our control. The difference is, for a very, very long time in my working motherhood journey, that inner stress and conflict, that burnout, it defined me. It defined my life. And I want you to ask yourself for a question for a minute. Does working mom burnout define your life? So it used to define my life. And that's because before I became a mom, I was a go-getter. I leaned fully in. I was at the top of my game in my business as a pediatrician. I went to Stanford. I got a public health degree at the exact same time that I finished medical school. I was on the executive leadership board within my practice. I felt like I was just in go, go, go mode. And it's because I could be. Once I had a kid and that kid developed severe special needs, she ended up getting a diagnosis of autism, severe anxiety disorder, having trouble with sleeping more than 20 minutes during the night as a newborn, me developing really serious postpartum depression and anxiety, and eventually OCD. I realized I needed a change. I was trying to do all things at once. I was like an octopus with the arms pulled in 8 different directions. And over time, I realized that I needed a different framework for myself, but also as I talked with the working moms in my clinic, that I was not alone, that this was a definitive experience for most moms in the workplace. They feel like they are giving their all to their home and to their professional lives. There's nothing more to give. And at the same time, they feel like they should be doing more. So I would never promise to anyone, and I think it would be bull hockey for anyone to promise that they have a solution or a framework that will make life fully full of ease. That's just not the truth. My daughter still has fits when she is dysregulated. We still have lots of trauma in our home for my youngest daughter as a result of the diagnosis of my older daughter, and with dealing with all the complexities of the educational system with friends and navigating 2 kids at once. But I have found a way that makes it so that is manageable, and so that the coping skills that working moms use do not cause collateral damage to themselves or to the people around them as they are dealing with the stressors that come their way. This framework creates a life that's centered and successful. It's self-attuned, it's prioritized, it's purposeful, and it's sustainable. So a centered life that's successful at work and at home starts with a centered vision. You have to know where you're going if you want to get there. I start in my longer presentations and at modernmommydoc.com, my platform, with a visualization exercise that goes through what does it look like in themes for you if you were to look forward 5 years and feel like you were fully aligned, like you were living a life that had purpose and that had meaning. This photographic representation is my centered vision, where I'm sitting on a balcony. I'm looking out over the ocean. I have these cheap Target curtains there as well. And I have my kids that are coming back and forth from me. And I have my arms linked with women that go all the way down the beach. And when I look at that thematically, when I really break it down and try to do a values-based analysis of what that vision, that visual representation really means, there's 5 main themes that come to bear. For me, their contribution to other women in terms of strengthening them, helping them to find their own alignment, world travel or exploration in a world of COVID, right? Finding out about new cultures, new experiences, always learning, health, which by that I mean mental health and also true physical wellness, family connection, so connection to my children and to my partner and the people that I love, including my friends, and financial freedom. Now, I know that financial freedom looks like a weird one on here, and I do not mean being a billionaire. I mean having financial wellness, so not being really, really borne down or oppressed by all of the financial weight that can happen when you're full of debt. A little bit more about that in a second. So these are things that I care the most about. Every single person has different center points, I call them, that are on the areas that they really want to place their time, their energy, and their focus. But we can't spend all our time there. And in our lives, most of the time, we actually don't spend the majority of our time, energy, and focus on the things we care most about. Instead, we spend our time on everything else. And those are the things that are outside the circle. That's what's holding you back. When I look at what I call the centered life blueprint, in the center of the circle are your 5 center points, and outside of the circle, but inside the square of life, are all the things that have to get done, but that shouldn't define us. Sadly, they do define motherhood for so many women. Why do we stay outside the circle? Why would we ever not live a life that's fulfilling and meaningful? Well, there's a lot of good reasons. One, there's just the chaos of life. It's hard to spend time even focusing in on knowing what we care about or what we like or what we need. There's the busyness of life and the productivity kind of mantra that comes from our society in America. There's also time. There's only 24 hours in a day. There's mom guilt, this feeling that I shouldn't take care of myself because it's taking away from somebody else or somebody else's needs. And then, of course, we cannot forget institutional and social bias. As they talked about in the very beginning of the introduction here, we have so many forces that are at play against us, especially at this exact moment in the United States and globally. At the same time, while I advocate and partner alongside other people who are working for cultural change, both in the workplaces and at large, I know that there are practices we can take on and approaches we can take within our own individual lives that can make a difference while we have that radical acceptance and that forward movement for the things that are outside of our control. So we have to ask ourselves, do we live inside or outside the circle? And in my larger presentations, again, we look at kind of what is our ideal life? What would our life look like in 5 years, the way we want to be living versus how we live now? Women tell me when they do this exercise, it brings about a stark realization of how differently they are living now versus how they would live if they felt like they had, quote unquote, the choice. So once we realize, oh my gosh, I'm spending all this time doing things, thinking about things, so pouring my energy into things that don't really matter at all to me, then we can start to find ways to practically approach them so that they minimize their effect on our lives. Let's start with the non-negotiables. These are the things that you have to do even when you don't want to do them. These are tasks that require efficiency and productivity. We have to get them done with as little time or effort as possible. And the solution to these is to create systems and rely on smart organizational tools that make it easier for you to accomplish your tasks. This is things like streamlining meal prep, household maintenance, using technology or apps or organizers, using a notebook for brain dumps, single tasking versus multitasking. And this is an area that most people who are listeners today probably are the most familiar with in terms of how to address or get things done more effectively or with a minimal impact on our lives. The problem is these things tend to be the starting place and the stopping place, when really there is so much more that we have to do if we want to be effective. If we just get faster and better at doing things, we'll add more things to our plate. We have to actually reduce what's on our plate in the first place. And we can do that by addressing the swappables. The swappables are the things that have to get done, but that someone or something else can do for you. These are tasks that can be delegated to others or completely automated. They could be handed off to your partner or your kids if they're old enough. As a pediatrician, I think this one's really, really important. Chores can start at the age of 3. They could be to other people with your parenting village if you don't have a partner. It could be friends or family. This could be about swapping out who takes kids to school and who picks them up. It could be about maybe someone else doing something for you, like hiring a house cleaner, but this isn't tied just to money or people who are able to outsource. It can also be tied to you sharing responsibilities with the people that you love for absolutely no money at all. These could be things like shared responsibility lists with a partner, building equity if you do have a partner, caregivers that are there to help you out, your mom village, take out or pre-prepped meals, or just simplifying your meals to make it so that it's a really quick meal kit, kid chore lists, or help with house cleaning or automatic bill pay. Again, though, the list doesn't stop there. We have to still keep on homing in on what's actually important and taking more off of our list. So we can do some things more quickly with the non-negotiables, some things we can completely take off our plates and give to somebody else, but some things we have to eliminate altogether. These are the contaminators. The contaminators are the things that you have to do and you think you kind of want to do, but they don't fall within the circle at all. They're tasks and commitments that fill up your schedule, but you don't actually have to accomplish them. They eat up your time and your family's time, and they keep you unnecessarily busy. And the solution here is to be aware, to be auditing where you feel like you're overwhelmed and you're stretched too thin, and that you're doing things out of obligation or out of should-haves. It's also about committing to creating a physical environment and daily schedule that gives you space for reflection, reevaluation, and mindful presence. You have to identify what's stressing you and stop doing it. So that might be, for me, signing my kids up for a third extracurricular activity that they really don't need to do, right? That I'm doing just because I want them to maybe compete with other kids. That might mean me saying yes to a committee that really doesn't serve me or anyone else. It's about taking away the shoulds of motherhood and instead replacing it with the what I want to's in motherhood, or what actually serves me and my family. The last area that we can address is the heartstrings. These are the things that we have to do, we want to do, but they aren't necessarily part of the ultimate vision for our life, or we have to do them in such a way that works for us. This is about setting boundaries, designating times for tasks or for relationships that work in a way for you. For my autistic daughter, for example, it actually doesn't work to have my in-laws come visit and stay with us. We learned that the hard way over lots of tears and big discussions. Instead, we meet in a neutral space for 1 to 2 days so that my child doesn't get overwhelmed. She doesn't start yelling at everybody. Everything doesn't kind of go to pot. So that is a really rough conversation that I had to have, but it was all based off boundaries and me having really honest, transparent conversations and limits on what I could handle and my kids could handle. The bottom line for the heartstrings is setting boundaries that serve you. So why do we stay outside the circle if we would love to be inside it? A lot of the reason that we do that is because we don't know how to put ourselves in the very center of the circle. So I could talk to you until I'm blue in the face about how you need to have a vision for your life. You need to know what are the things you care the most about. You need to set up practical strategies that are sustainable for dealing with the non-negotiables, the swappables, the contaminators, the heartstrings. But if you don't know who you are as a person and you're not aware of your own needs, none of that will happen. There's a few strategies you can use to tune into yourself and to prioritize yourself. And I want to make a caveat. There are so many memes out there these days that say self-care is not selfish or you're not a shitty mom. That can be true, but there is some nuance to that. If you go for one night to a concert with your friends, that's not selfish at all. If you're out every single night, just gone, of course, that's not the best thing for you and your family if family connection or contribution is on your list of top priorities. Similarly, so many of us have developed coping skills. There was a recent study about coping skills with alcoholism for moms with kids under the age of 5, and especially during the pandemic, this has happened. But not all coping skills are created equal. You want to try to create coping skills that will allow you to be the person that you want to be in 5 years, as opposed to what will be the coping skill you could apply that will feel good in that moment. So the things that can bring you back to your center and allow you to keep on coming back to this framework will be things like self-compassion. When we get stressed, when we feel like that contribution or connection to our families is in opposition to the contribution that we want to make to other people or our work obligations or the things that we really care about and are passionate about when it comes to our professional lives. Having an awareness, stopping and thinking, I feel conflicted. That makes sense. Anyone who is in this position would feel conflicted or would feel guilty, gives our bodies and our neurobiological systems the pause that we need to respond to that conflict versus react to it and make a decision that's not going to be as productive for us. The second thing that we can do is spend time being in mindfulness and in connection with ourselves. This doesn't have to be complicated. It can be 5 minutes a day where you're sitting in the shower with the door locked, where no one else is there, and you get to just think and be aware of your thoughts and analyze them without judgment, but with curiosity, with the mind of a scientist. It could be that you are spending time driving in the car without the radio on, without you looking at your phone, without you listening to a podcast. So you get that time just to be quiet with yourself and to really realize what are the feelings and the thoughts that are coming in. The third way that people can really take care of themselves and be attuned to themselves is to spend time doing things that bring them joy throughout the week. Again, this isn't complicated. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It could be you sitting on a couch, resting and relaxing for an hour, reading a book that you love. It could be going out to dinner with a friend. It could be you exercising for the sake of pleasure and of joy and you connecting to that Justin Bieber loving self of yours. Told you it would come back. In an hour where you are just walking around the block with your headphones in. So the Center Life Blueprint is really about you knowing where it is you want to go, having a clear understanding of if you are spending your time and your energy outside of those things or inside your centered circle, and then continuing to attune to yourself and to build self-awareness and true self-care practices so that you can be successful along the way. Before I close, one thing that people always ask me about, is this something that you do and it's a one and done? Absolutely not. No one does this perfectly. No one does this all the time. No one, like I said in the very beginning, has a life that doesn't have problems. And anyone that tells you otherwise is selling you some snake oil. However, this model is something you can come back to time and time again when you're feeling off, when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling out of alignment. You can find out more about me and Modern Mommy Doc. I'd love to walk you through this in more than a 20-minute session at modernmommydoc.com, or come find me on Instagram at modernmommydoc, and I would love to connect with you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Casares. Thanks for being with us today. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. And this portion of today's summit will not be recorded.